Okay, it appears we are indeed up, running and live. Good evening, everyone from Dubai. It's Phil Pendlebury here, and I hope you're having a super mega large day. For any visitors from Middle East, assalamu alaikum, marhaba, good to have you with us too. So, today's exploit into the brand new Spectralayers 11. I've got a few things set up for you, but first of all, I'd like to say congratulations to Robin and the rest of the team at Steinberg on an absolutely stellar release. Some amazing new features and improvements, and I'm going to show you some of them today. Actually, we're going to focus mainly on the modules and module management. Now, that might sound a little bit boring, but actually, it's really interesting stuff and very, very useful. Some of the modules existed previously, like the Unmix Song and noisy speech and all these kinds of things, but they have been improved, and there's a new way of working being introduced, which I'm really excited to show you about. So what I'm going to do, I'll just quickly check my notes. What I'm going to do today is just start with some kind of practical examples. I'm just going to show you 2 or 3 of the things, but we're going to do it in quite fine detail as opposed to some of the other videos where they kind of just tend to chop through it. So hopefully we'll get everything nice and clear. So modules, presets, module management, preset management, batch processing, and a couple of other little goodies as well. So I think that's about it for the introduction. Let's move into Spectralayers 11 and see what we're going to do. Okay, so here we are in Spectralayers 11. I have got the screen kind of zoomed down a little bit, so hopefully you can see. And if anything's not clear, I've got my friend Terry here with me again to moderate the chat if there is any, and also we'll attempt to zoom in and out on certain things as we're going. So just in case you haven't seen Spectralayers before, let's just quickly open up a file. It doesn't matter what it is. I just want to quickly show you a little bit around the interface. At the top, we've got, of course, a menu system here. That goes without saying. On the left-hand side, there is a lot of tools for making various selections on the spectral areas. And actually, we won't be really dealing with any of this today, because today, the main thing is all about this side over here, or in fact, this area of the menu, if you'd rather use the menu, is the modules. And as you can see, there's a whole list of them here. I've got my kind of things set up in a certain way. You can move all this stuff around, the history and the layers and the channels and so on. And I've got my modules nice and large at the top. You can make those smaller. You can even collapse if you wish to. So there's a whole bunch of modules, and we're going to be dealing with 2 or 3 of the newer ones today. And also, we're going to be having a look at the modules chain, which is really quite interesting, exciting, and useful. Hopefully you'll agree. So let's move into it. I'll get my camera off as usual, and let's close this file down. And in fact, we're probably going to open that one again in a minute, I think. So yeah, actually, there's no need to close it down. We'll just leave it as it is. And let's go. Let's move into the first area. Actually thinking about it, I'm not quite ready. Need to put the headphones on, don't I? This is what happens when we're live. You know, if I forgot to put those on, I wouldn't be able to hear any of the music and anything that's happening. So headphones on. You guys, of course, do not need headphones today. We're not going to be doing anything that requires that careful of a listen. All right, so headphones are on. Let's just make sure I've got a bit of noise coming through. Yeah, that's fine. All right, so what I'm going to do is turn the camera off, and actually we're going to start with a music file. So if I can find the correct file here, I believe it's this one. It is. And we'll have a quick listen before I tell you anything about it. I'm not going to play the whole thing. We'll just have a quick listen to the first, few seconds. All right, so you can hear that that is my emulation of a live file, a live song. It's not actually really live. I got some crowd noise and put it over the top and played around with it because I did try this actually with some actual live music, using, for instance, AC/DC, one of their albums live, and it worked really, really well. But unfortunately, of course, I can't play you that over YouTube. Otherwise, live, it'll get muted, or if it was pre-recorded, you know, we'll get copyright strikes. So I can't do that. But I urge you to try everything I'm doing with some of your favorite music, you know, when you get a chance. All right. So that's basically it. That's a live song. And the first thing I wanted to show you here was the new Unmix crowd noise feature. So it's a new module. And if I can just find it here, because I've got everything slimmed down a little bit. There it is, Unmix crowd noise. So we'll get that into the center and then we'll hopefully zoom in. Now there's no presets on this. It's just an on or off kind of scenario. And in case you're not aware, what we can do with Spectralayers is we can hit this little preview button here and it'll give us an idea of the end process. So let's just do that. We'll leave the preview in foreground and you can see it's doing its work. And there's the music poking through. And if we go the other way around, or in fact, if we move the selection, and if we go the other way around and preview the crowd, it's a bit of a challenge with something like this for Spectralayers, I must admit. Like I said, this works really well on actual live music, but when I've put the thing together like this, it's not quite the same. But we'll give it a chance to do its best. So first thing I'm going to do is apply that. And we'll see, it takes a few seconds. And we now have 2 layers. Let's just move that up a little bit so you can see here. We've now ended up with 2 layers. One is yellow, one is purple. And you can see if I solo the crowd noise, that's the crowd noise layer. And if we solo the foreground, we get only the foreground and not so much of the crowd noise. There is little bits that peek through, and with the tools over here, you could clean that up really nicely later on. And so, like I said, Unmix crowd noise, it'd be useful. I think, like I said earlier, I know, like I said about the AC/DC, using that as an example, one of my favorite AC/DC songs, Riff Raff. And it's really interesting. You can hear, when you remove the crowd noise from it, you can hear exactly what they're doing as they enter the stage and all that kind of thing. And of course, I'm aware, as I'm sure you are, like with movies and sound design, that a lot of the crowd noise on a live album may well be overdubbed, but it'll be recorded from the actual gig in some way or another, usually. So this is really, you know, pushing it a bit, but it's more about the principle that we're on here. So I want to get through these because we get into the interesting part in a bit. So you notice while I was doing that, we managed to change the colors around. So this is not such a problem at the moment when we've only got 2 layers. We've only got the crowd and we've got the foreground music. So, you know, we can change, let's make them quite drastic, make the crowd into like a magenta. And you can see there quite clearly on the screen. I've also got the crosshair turned on, which I quite like. So in case you have Spectralayers and you're not seeing the display quite like I am, yeah, you just need to turn the crosshair cursor on, which is under the menu here with the crosshair coordinates and the crosshair itself. So we had a look at the colors. There's not really much else to worry about right now. Like I said, there is other videos that I've done and other people have done as well that will give you much more detail. I want to concentrate on the modules today. Okay, so we've done our unmix. We've got two layers. We've got foreground and crowd. So what I want to do is take a note of that layer name. These are the default layers. You can, of course, rename them yourself, but let's leave them as default and just remember that name, foreground. Remember how it's spelt, and we'll get to that in a minute and you'll understand why I'm interested in that. So we're going to mute the crowd off and have a quick listen. So it's not bad. There's a few little bits at the beginning there where there was some crowd actually clapping on the sample that I used, but it's passable. It's passable, especially for what we're going to do today. Now that we've got that, what we're going to do next is the Unmix Song. Now we've got some new features on Unmix Song. Let's just zoom that out a little bit. So we've got the ability to take vocals, drums, guitar, piano. We've got the new sax and brass, bass, of course, and other, which is everything that's left over. And once again, we have a preview. We can preview whichever particular part we want to preview. So let's just have a quick listen to what Spectralayers thinks is the drums. Don't forget, we've got this layer selected at the moment, so it's working on that. Let's have a quick listen. Might take a second. Okay, so you can hear it's separated the drums quite nicely there. Again, not perfectly, and I don't think you're ever going to get this super perfect, but the whole point of this really is usually to rebalance things a little bit, as opposed to, you know, strip out the entire drums. Although stripping out vocals does work really well, but there's no vocals in this track. So, right. So we'll do the Unmix Song. We'll save a preset here because we've got no vocals and because we've got no sax and brass. We'll save a preset. And this is important for what we're going to do in a while. So I've got one already saved here. PAP, that's my initials, minus brass, minus vox, and that'll give you that. If we go back to the default, you'll see it'll select that. If we wanted to save, etc., etc. But it's nice to save your own preset. And again, you'll see why we're going to do that in a minute. We'll leave the quality on high. Oh, in fact, let's put it on extreme. Let's do that, and I'll save that preset again. Let's do that again. PAP, whoops. Minus brass, minus vox. And there we have the preset saved, just in case you didn't realize how to do that. So I'm now going to apply that to the entire song. We've got the foreground selected, off we go. And it's using my graphics card, which is a NVIDIA 1490 to do this, so quite quick. And don't forget, we started this off with the song with the crowd noise. All right, so now we've got a bunch more layers appeared over here. And actually, why don't we zoom out? Why don't we pull those layers out like this so that you can see them a little bit more clearly? So, well, yeah, there we go. Let's do it like that, though. Now we can see them really clearly. So we've still got our original crowd. Let's unmute all that. We've still got our original crowd noise that we took out with the first pass. But now we've got the foreground layer, and we've got all the individual parts of the foreground. So if we wanted to, for instance, listen to the guitar only, let's listen to that. right, so you get the point of that. We've got the ability to now adjust things, even though we started off with the song that had the crowd noise over it. Why don't we go one step further, and now we'll try Unmix Drums. So what we'll do is just unsolo all of these, and we'll select the drums, and we go back to modules. In fact, again, I'm going to drag out the modules now so that we can see them really clearly. There we go. Okay. So we'll put that over there, because what you're seeing on the screen is not super important. What's important here is the modules and the layers. All right. So we've got the drum layer selected. We can solo it. And what we'll do now is we'll go to Unmix Drums. And once again, there's no preset for this because it just does the drums. We can preview if we like. Okay. But what we do is we'll just apply that. And quite quickly, it'll go through. And once that's done, you'll see that now we've got the individual stems of the drums underneath the little drum area here. So for instance, if we want to just listen to the snare, of course, if we want to bring everything back in, we can just unsolo those. Incidentally, you're listening to that bass there. If it sounds a little distorted, it is actually a distorted bass. I always find that quite clever, the fact that Spectralayers can pick up the bass and even the kind of distortion, which is not bottom end, if you know what I mean. Have a quick listen to that. Bit of piano poking through. I should also point out, not making excuses here, but should point out that these individual stems have all come from a track that had that horrible crowd noise all over it. So it does actually work a lot better when you're doing it with a simple music file as opposed to something that's had crowd noise and reverb and stuff all over it. Anyway, okay, so there was no preset involved in unmixing the drums. And what we've done 3 steps. We've done the remove crowd noise, we've done the Unmix Song, and then we've done the Unmix Drums. So we've ended up with a whole bunch of separated areas from that particular song. Now for the clever part, the part that I've been really looking forward to. And as I said earlier, it's more a case of showing you the practical side of this rather than the results. I admit the results on this one are not amazing. Actually, in one of the dialogue things we're going to do after this, I think you'll be quite impressed. But anyway, let's go for it. So first thing I'm going to do is set the whole thing back to how it was when we started. So we've got our little history area here. Again, we could drag that out, but we're not going to use it very much. So I'll just click open, and you can see now we're back to the original file. Okay. So here's the new modules chain. We bring that up, let's clear it. So I guess it kind of speaks for itself. What is the modules chain? It's almost like a batch process, but not, because batch processing actually comes later, and we'll get to that towards the end of the stream. But it speaks for itself. It's basically a way of chaining those modules together. But it's not just as simple as dragging the modules in and saying, off you go. This is why I was saying earlier about taking a note of the actual layers that we want to work on. So let's build up what we did just now. So the first thing we did was unmix crowd noise. And you can see that as soon as I drag that in from the modules area into the modules chainer, we've got some controls here. So we'll zoom in on those if we can. So we've got a mute or a bypass. Here we have the actual settings. So this is where if you do have a specific thing you want to do, this is where having a preset comes in useful, because you can literally just drag your preset in or open your preset. But in this case, there isn't any. We have the selection area, which is not important because we're not working on a selection, we're working on the whole file. And then the important part here is the target layer. Now, in this case, because we've got Unmix crowd noise, there isn't a target layer because the target layer is going to be the main layer. So let's now drag in the Unmix Song. And again, we've got those same areas. And now we've got the Unmix Song module. We can now select that preset that I had earlier, which was without the vocals and without the sax. We don't need to apply because otherwise it'll apply it now. We don't need to preview it. We just needed to select that preset. Once again, selection is not important. However, in this case, the target layer is important because we don't want it to work over the crowd noise and the actual, music that we took out. So the layer, if you remember, was called foreground. So we'll add that in and we're ready to go. And you can see it's going to say Unmix Song on the foreground layer. And then finally, we're going to do Unmix Drums. This is, the whole procedure that we did just now. So again, mute, not important. The preset, there isn't any for Unmix Drums. Selection, not required. And the target layer this time is going to be drums, because that's the resulting target layer, or the resulting layer when we do an Unmix Song. So there we have our three processes, which basically is what we've just done in the video. And again, you can save that to a preset. I've already got one saved. But we'll do another. We'll save it now. We'll save it now. Why not? PAP. Crowd. Song. Drums. How's that? So there it is. And that should have saved everything. Yeah. And we'll just make sure we're there, and we are. So now all we have to do is click. Let's move these. There we go. We click apply. So Spectralayers is going to do its stuff on the crowd noise. It's going to do the Unmix Song on the foreground layer. Might take a couple of seconds. While it's working, I'll just have a quick drink of water. Cheers. And we're done. So what you've ended up now is exactly what we did earlier on, but all done in one process. Now, you imagine if you have 5 or 6 different files that you want to process like that. That's how easy it is to chain all these things together. And if we were just looking to try and get the snare and the hi-hat maybe out of that particular big mess of music and crowd noise, that's how we've done it. I think really the point here in that particular example was just to show that sometimes these things take a little bit of extra time to set up. For example, saving the presets. You might usually just be rushing through and you don't want to mess around with that. But as you may know, when it comes to automating and batch processing certain things, a little bit of extra time when you're doing the groundwork can save you a lot of time in the end. So it's always a good idea to, store your presets, take some notes, then it might save you time later on. Now we've had an introduction to how it works. You've seen the procedure. Let's move on to something with dialogue. So I'm going to close this file down. I'm not going to save it yet. And I don't want to save anything. We'll just close it down. So now you can see that the layers are blank again. And we've still got our modules here. And let's have a look at a very realistic example now, because this is actually a real file that somebody sent to me with some dialogue. So I'm going to load the file.
I like to call it a condition more than a disease because it's induced, it's self-induced.
So that is not me making up like I often have to do. It's not me making up, some dialogue and adding reverb to it and so on and so forth. That's an actual recording that somebody took, unfortunately. And yeah, it happens, we've all done it once or twice over the years. So what we're going to do, my attempt here is to do quite a few processes. I want to remove the reverb, the background noise. I want to, probably do a transcription and so on. So once again, let's go through the process as if we were doing it a step at a time. So let's try the voice de-reverb on that. I don't know if, I've got a preset here that says 80%. So let's just have a quick listen and see what that does.
I like to call it a condition more than a disease because it's induced, it's self-induced.
Okay, that's already a lot better. What happens if we put it up to 100%?
I like to call it a condition more than a disease because it's induced, it's self-induced.
So as you can hear there, and like I said, I want to make this a more realistic example than the music one was because this is a real file. The music one, I made it up and I made it too difficult, really. Anyway, sorry. So it's doing a decent job, but even at a higher rating, you're losing some words.
Call it a condition.
Sorry.
Call it a condition. More.
And
call it a condition.
There's artifacts and there's things happening there that are undesirable. So I don't want to do a de-reverb straight away. But I've saved the preset there that I thought was kind of roughly, the best setting to do it. So what I'm going to do is try the voice DeNoise. And this is a new module. So let's have a listen to that and see how that behaves. So again, we'll leave it roughly on, we'll leave it on strong, and leave it on 90%, and let's have a preview.
Call it a condition more than a disease because it's induced, it's self-induced.
Not bad, not bad. It's also removed quite a lot of the reverb. So we'll save that preset as PAP strong 90%. And just out of interest, let's have a listen to the signal. So that's what's being removed, All right, so we'll apply that, let it do its job. Okay. And you see now we've got the history showing up here that we've done a voice denoise. And we've got no separate layers for that because the voice denoiser does literally just remove noise. Okay, so let's have a listen.
I like to call it a condition more than a disease because it's induced, it's self-induced.
Okay, now because there is quite a lot of reverb on that originally. The voice DeNoise has got rid of some of the noise, but there's still a few artifacts. So now we're going to go back to the voice DeReverb. We'll leave my 80% and I'm just going to apply that. And now let's see what we've got.
I like to call it a condition more than a disease because it's induced, it's self-induced.
That's pretty impressive, isn't it? And then finally, what we'll do, actually not quite finally, let's just go a little bit further here. So we'll do Unmix Noisy Speech. And no preset on this, all we need is the speech. Let's see what it does. Ooh, it's done quite a lot there. We've got noise and speech as separate layers. And it's always a good clue when you solo the noise and you can see there's some bits there, but it doesn't look like there's any voice. So let's solo the speech and see how far we've got now.
I like to call it a condition more than a disease because it's induced, it's self-induced.
Pretty impressive, isn't it? And then the next process would be to maybe add an EQ of some kind. So we're going to try with a VST3 plugin. So we've clicked the VST3 effects module. And now we have the option to add a VST effect. So let's make sure we've got the speech layer selected, which we have. And we'll get our FabFilter Pro Q3. And we'll just roll off a bit of bottom end. A little dip somewhere around 2K-ish, a little bit, and we'll roll off a bit of top end. And then what I'm going to do is save that as, let's just call it PAP, whoops, speech. There we go. So then we're going to apply that, and it's done. And you can see on the history here, and it's applied to the speech area only. Let's have a listen.
I like to call it a condition more than a disease because it's induced, it's self-induced.
Pretty impressive. And as a final thing, let's do the Unmix Transcription. So again, click the module, here it is. I've got Best Auto, which is going to automatically detect the language. And we don't need to preview, we'll just apply that straight away. And we should then end up with a transcription of the words. Might take a few seconds. And now we can zoom in and we can see that we've got the transcription at the bottom.
I like to call it a
Edit
condition
that.
more than a disease because it's induced, it's self-induced.
So we could edit that if we want to. And of course, as you know from the previous videos, we can export it as a text file or whatever we feel like. All right, so we've ended up with this.
I like to call it a condition more than a disease because it's induced, it's self-induced.
And it came from this.
I like to call it a condition more than a disease because it's induced, it's self-induced.
So I think that's pretty impressive, to be honest. I mean, you know, that's a real world example as well. And we've done all the procedures one by one. So now there's another little trick that I'd like to show you. We're going to quickly build that up. I know we've done it twice now, and I just wanted to make sure it was really clear. But so we're going to quickly build that up into a modules chain. And then there's another little trick that I'd like to show you. All right. So we're back to the original file. In fact, what we can do, we can close that down completely. We're not going to save it. And we'll just open up the raw file again, just so that we've cleared the history here.
I like to call it a condition.
And then we're going to go to modules chain. So I've already got a preset here that I set up earlier on, but what we'll do is we'll just build it up quickly from scratch like we did earlier. So we started with voice DeNoise. We don't need to mute. We'll use my PAP strong preset. So that's saved there. And at the moment, the target layer is just going to be the actual voice, so we don't need to set that. Then we went to voice DeReverb. Once again, my preset of 80%. And the target layer on this one, again, doesn't need to be set because we already have it. It's, you know, there isn't any separate layers yet from voice DeNoise. Then we went to Unmix Noisy Speech. Once again, no preset on this, so no need to worry there. But we do know that the layer name will be speech after this one. So then we're going to add the VST effects. We're going to go to the preset, which is PAP speech that I've already set earlier on. You could change this, of course, if you wanted to. And with that one, because with Unmix Noisy Speech, we do get 2 layers, we're going to set the target layer as speech. And then finally, we did Unmix Transcription. Once again, the preset, PAP Best Auto, and the target layer is also going to be speech. Whoops. So now we can save that as a new preset. So we'll save that PAP live demo 1. Okay, and then we will apply it. So don't forget, we're at the stage at the moment of this.
I like to call it a condition.
So let's apply and let Spectralayers do its work. Small delay there on the VST3 effects. And there we have the finished result. And as you can see, we can edit, we can export. So let's have a quick listen.
I like to call it a condition more than a disease because it's induced, it's self-induced.
So that's pretty impressive. And one little thing I was saying earlier about a little trick. So you might have a different dialogue area that, you know, that particular chain doesn't work particularly well with. But what we can do is we can say, okay, we won't bother with Unmix Transcription. So let's just actually reopen it. There we are.
A condition.
Okay. Back to our modules chain. We can try moving noisy speech up to the beginning. And don't forget that now we've done that, and we'll say voice DeNoise, but we'll do that after the reverb. So we'll move that over there. Sorry. There, like this. And don't forget now, because we've moved everything after Unmix Noisy Speech, we end up with 2 layers from that. So we're going to need to make sure that we apply that to the speech layer. And of course, voice DeNoise will also be on the speech layer now. VST3 already is. Unmix Transcription doesn't matter because we're not going to do that now, but we're just going to do an alternative order to see if it works any better. So let's try that. Because we don't have the transcript now, you know, we're not going to end up with a transcription. That doesn't matter. And once again, now we can go back and we can play.
I like to call it a condition.
There's the noise. You can even hear somebody clapping there in the background. And there's the speech.
I like to call it a condition more than a disease because it's induced, it's self-induced. I like to call it a disease.
Okay, either of those work quite well. You might have your favorites. And again, there's no point in going into it right now because, well, for a start off on YouTube, it's very difficult to pick out the fine detail, isn't it? So hope you understand and agree that that is a powerful feature. The benefit of it is, let's try one more thing. So I'm going to close that one down. So we got nothing. And I'm going to pull up a little excerpt from my voice reel demo. Let's have a quick listen to this.
We're recording lots of voices today. Let's have a look and see what's going on in Studio One.
Okay.
Ah, looks like someone's reading the news. And now the news. A statement has been released today by Sahib and...
So as you can hear, we've got all sorts of things going on there. Music, sound effects, doors opening and closing, etc. Some of you will remember that from when I actually showed you how I made that whole demo, and it's 4 minutes long, so we're not going to play the whole thing right now. And we're just working on this little section, all right? But let's just say, again, we wanted to get a transcription of that. And yeah, we're working on a short file now because I know I'm already rabbiting on and I know it might be getting a bit boring, but imagine if we wanted to get the whole 4 minutes. So, well, have I got anything in the archive? Well, I have, because I've got this thing that we did earlier on. Now, there's no need for the voice DeReverb, but why don't we just try the rest of it and see if this whole chain works, you know, reasonably well with what we've got. We'll save the transcription, maybe. We'll do that afterwards. So we've got 3 processes there, and let's see how it handles that. So we're unmixing the speech. We're doing a voice denoise. And the voice denoise, like I said, it does tend to take a little bit longer than some of the other processes. So, you know, we'll just sit here for a minute while that happens. Oh, it's finished. Okay, cool. And let's have a listen. First of all, we can see the noise side. That's the music and all that stuff. And let's have a listen to what happened to the speech side.
We're recording lots of voices today. Let's have a look and see what's going on in Studio One.
Okay.
Ah, looks like someone's reading the news.
And that's where the music was.
And now the news. A statement has been released today by Sahib Anthony Didibineni Bibisa, Prime Minister of Smegville. Mr. Didibineni Bibisa has warned all his loyal subjects that they should never, under any circumstances, type Google into Google, as this may break the internet.
So you get the idea. That was really handy because I already had that built up from the previous voice. Maybe more handy would be if you had various sections of that exact echoey voice to use that exact preset on. I noticed a little bit of artifact on the left and right there, like a real extreme left and right thing on this voice.
A statement has been released today by Sahib Anthony Didibineni Bibisa, Prime Minister of Smegville.
So I wonder if we can try one more thing with this, because we have a module that is also new, and I was going to show you this on some music. So let's try it first on this one, because I've noticed, I don't know how clear it is over YouTube. Have a listen.
A statement has been released today by Sahib Anthony Didibineni Bibisa, Prime Minister of...
There's like some fluctuations that seem to be extreme left and right. So what I'm going to do here is bring up the Unmix Mid side. We're going to use expanded on this. There is 2 modes, a standard and expanded. And expanded just gives you a little bit of extra clarity. So if we preview...
A statement has been released today by Sahib Anthony...
That's the mid. And if we preview the side... There you go. So I've just made a little selection here because I don't want it to go through the whole thing. So let's now apply that to that selection. And let's just loop that round. It might get a little bit boring, but we're not going to do it for long.
A statement has been released today by Sahib Anthony Bibisa, Prime Minister of Smegville. A statement has been released today by Sahib.
Well, doesn't that just work beautifully? Again, I don't know how clear that was, but the artifacts seem to be coming from left and right, and I believe that could have been because of the way I recorded that or treated that particular voice in the first place. Just have another listen. That's pretty amazing, actually.
A statement has been released today by Sahib Anthony Didibineni Bibisa, Prime Minister of Smegville. A statement has been released today by Sahib Anthony Didibineni Bibisa, Prime Minister of Smegville. A statement has been released today by Sahib Anthony Didibineni Bibisa.
Pretty cool. Pretty cool. I'm very impressed with that end result. And of course, after that, we could do the Unmix Transcription, and off we go. Or we could have done the Unmix Transcription as part of the batch. And don't forget, we could have added that little mid-side thing in. So if we wanted to do that, let's again just go back to normal. And if we wanted to do that, I'm not going to go through it all. I just want to quickly show you. So we could have gone to Unmix Mid-Side, drag that module over there, put it up here somewhere, made sure that the target layer was going to be speech. And then we could have run that whole thing, and you would have ended up, with the result. In fact, we could also have gone a stage further. And if we go back to where I've already done the Unmix Mid-Side, let's have a quick listen.
A statement has been released today by Sahib Anthony Didibineni Bibisa, Prime Minister of Smegville.
So I've got the side area taken down to like 20, let's say 25 dB down, just in case we're losing anything from that, all right? But what we could do is then go, okay, so Unmix Mid-Side, we take a note of that being the mid that we want to work on and the side that we want to work on. And we go to gain, again, drag that module in underneath mid-side. We don't need a preset. We can just set it up as -25. And here we need to make sure that we act on the side area. So shall we run it one more time? Why not? So let's just open that from scratch. Let's open it from scratch and run that whole thing. Modules chain. I've got DeReverb muted. I've got the transcription muted. And then we're going to unmix the noisy speech, denoise it, add a little bit of EQ, unmix mid-side, and then we're going to lower the gain on the side layer. Let's see what happens. Only takes a few seconds. It's pretty quick, isn't it? Those of you, as I've mentioned before, those of you that have a decent graphics card, you'll find that a lot of this stuff flies through. There's one or two that don't use it. I'm looking at my little CPU meter here. But Robin, the developer, is constantly working on updates and adding different modules to the graphics card ability. So now you see the side channel has been reduced. I can barely hear it. So if we just leave everything open and mute the noise.
Going on in Studio One.
When we get to
A
that.
statement has been released today by Sahib Anthony Didibineni Bibisa, Prime Minister of Smegville.
Pretty cool, huh? Okay, let's move on to the next little section. We've got 2 little bits left to do, and then we're done. All right, so these are very quick, but I want to quickly show you mid-side on music. So let's do that now. So we close the module chain, we'll close the file, and we'll just quickly open up. It is that one there. Okay, so this is just the music without any crowd noise.
So now it's unreasonable this and impossible that. There's a problem.
Now again, you know what's going to happen here. It's quite simple. We're not going to build up chains or anything like that, but all we're going to do is just go to the Unmix Mid-Side, and I'm going to apply that. And wow, super fast, no crickets at all. And now we have two separate faders, or two separate layers with faders for the mid and the side. And let's play.
So now it's unreasonable this and impossible that. There's a problem to solve, and the world's in a trap.
Right, I need to point out again, because I'm using my own music here as opposed to standard thing, when I did the vocals for this, it's just a demo, I did two vocals. Usually you do both your vocals and you'd have them center and double track. But what I did, because I was trying this out and showing it in Dolby Atmos, I remember now, I had the vocals slightly panned, which is not really normal. Yes, if you're doing backing vocals, you'll have them panned all over. In this case, I had the vocals slightly panned. So this is why when I increase the side, you're actually getting, you know, a little bit of those vocals sticking out.
So now it's unreasonable this and impossible that. There's a problem to solve, and the world's in a trap. Wanting progress for all.
So that's the new mid side. And again, if you build that up into other things, bearing in mind, okay, we have plugins that can deal with mid side. Know that, right? But if you wanted to say DeNoise only the side, or if you wanted to, you know, do a transcript or something like that, where you had noise going on around, the mid side process is really useful. Okay, so we've got two more little things I want to show you before we finally can have our cup of tea. We can keep that one open, doesn't matter. So we've got now the batch processing. All right, so actually, yeah, we can leave that open, doesn't matter. And that comes under File, Batch Process. So back to what we did earlier on. Remember, we worked on those two dialogue files. So let's pull them in. We've got the condition one there, and we've got the excerpt from my voice reel. And basically what's going to happen here, ignore all these now. We're literally only looking at this window. We've pulled in those two files. You can pull in as many as you want. And we're going to set the location. Yeah, let's set the location to like somewhere over here. Select folder. And we're going to export the layers individually. The format, we can choose whatever we want. I'm just going to leave that to auto. But of course, now the nice thing here is because we saved our modules chain earlier on, and you can, of course, pick any of these presets you want. So because we saved that earlier, if there was a whole bunch of these files that we wanted to deal with, so we've got kind of a batch within a batch now. Like, again, if you imagine the very reverby recording, right? So imagine you've got an hour of that, but they're all chopped up into, you know, section 1, section 2, section 3, etc. So earlier I've showed you how to build up the module chain, deal with one of them. And the module chain was built up of lots of other modules. So we've gone from little individual bits into a module chain that helps you deal with one of those files. But now we want to apply that same thing to the whole bunch of files that you were sent from the sound guy who didn't realize there was so much reverb in the room. We can now select the preset, select all 100 of those, you know, various reverby recordings. Maybe we'll disable this, you know, we will maybe, you know, disable the voice denoise or whatever. You can choose, but in this case, you know, because they're both slightly different, it won't work perfectly. But imagine if they were all that recording, right? So you just uncheck everything. We wouldn't do encryption, and off you go. And now what Spectralayers is going to do is going to go through each one of those files. So again, I'll let you look at me while this is doing its thing, because we're not going to play this. There's no point. But what it's doing now is it's taking each one of the files you've put into that batch process and then applying the mini batch process of each module, the module chain, to each one of those files. And actually there it is, it's done. And the final icing on the cake there is because we selected all layers, we now have all of those layers have been saved. And I'm going to show you this on the screen. If you can see the condition one and the VT real X, which is the two files we used. And if we expand those out, you can see that we've got the resulting layers exported as WAV files. So that is pretty amazing. The amount of time that can be saved using, building up the modules chains and then using the batch process itself. Oof, okay. I've got a bit of a sore throat after all that. And like I said, I know we could have condensed this down. And as I always say, what I like to do is go through things slowly but surely, make sure that everything's clear, and then we'll index later on so that you can, anybody else can easily find what we're looking for. There's one more thing I just quickly want to mention here before we finish off. So once again, I just need to find a picture. So, we were talking earlier on, or throughout the entire video, really, we were talking about saving the presets and all that. Now, at the moment, the presets are not stored with all the other presets of Spectralayers. They're actually stored on Windows in the registry and on Mac in another area as well. So just wanted to quickly get your attention on this. Robin kindly sent me this picture earlier on. If you want to back up all your modules and presets and so on, you have to do it at the moment through the registry. So that's the area in Windows. It's HKey Current Users, Software, Steinberg, Spectralayers 11, and you'll see the modules and everything there. You just need to export that key. If you're not comfortable with that, maybe drop me a line, I'll show you how it's done. And with Mac, the presets are in that area there, Library, Preferences, com.steinberg, Spectralayers 11, plist, and you'll see there, all your presets are there. Okay, so that concludes our little session on Spectralayers modules. I hope you didn't find it too monotonous. Once again, as I was saying about the whole thing, really, the point being is that small things, a little bit of extra time will save you a lot of time in the end. And so we've gone from having each individual module, the process being built up into a module chain, and then the module chain being put into a batch process. So maybe I'm doing this the wrong way around. Maybe it should be that. But very, very time saving, especially if you have a lot of similar files or a lot of similar operations to do. Right, that's it from me. Thank you ever so much for being with us. Thanks, Terry. I do hope you have a great rest of the day, evening, or whatever you're doing, and hope we'll see you sometime soon. All the best. Cheers for now.